Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. We're delighted to have you with us today. Welcome to today's webinar on effective action planning and driving change using engagement survey results. My name's Sarah Hobbs. I'm hosting today's webinar with my colleague Roger Perry. Thank you very much for presenting today. Uh, just a few housekeeping stuff before we get started. You are muted, but we also do want to hear from you, so please use the Q&A and the chat function that's available. And at the end, there will be time for a Q&A, so we will be answering questions as well as those pre-asked questions that were submitted on registration. There will be a poll to answer and an interactive question as well within today's webinar. So again, please take part. It would be lovely to hear from you and to sort of get those results in and sharing your approach. We'll also be sharing slides and recording afterwards as well. So that'll be coming through into your inboxes. Next slide, please, Roger. Bear with me, just checking on my audio. Okay. So, yeah. So what to expect today? We're going to start with a brief introduction to WorkBuzz, in case you're not familiar with us and what we do. Again, as mentioned before, there'll be polls to understand how your organization's approach into action planning. I'll then hand over to Roger, who will share slides and talk through today's content and today's presentation. And then, like I mentioned, crucially, we'll have plenty of time to answer your questions afterwards as well. Next slide, please, Roger. So again, don't want to spend too much time on this, but yeah, just want to sort of briefly introduce WorkBuzz to those who aren't familiar with us and had the pleasure of working with us yet. At WorkBuzz, we work with HR leaders to help them measure, understand, and improve engagement. Not only do we have years of experience under our belts consulting leadership teams on how to drive engagement amongst their people, but the WorkBuzz survey platform is built to provide clarity on how to turn employee feedback into change, make sure people feel heard, and ultimately improve working lives. So, next slide, please. So, we work with companies around the world, from not-for-profit organizations to leading retail and hospitality brands, construction businesses, as well as everything in between. And these clients use the WorkBuzz platform to gather feedback from their people throughout the whole employee lifecycle process, from onboarding through to exit, and all the important moments in between as well. From the full diagnosis that an engagement survey can provide, to bite-sized listening moments and quick pulse checks. All of it is included in the one platform and one subscription to suit your listening program and works best for you. The versatility means that you can ask a bespoke question set to get the feedback that matters to your organization. Um, to the platform is paired with ongoing support and guidance from a dedicated team. We also help HR to really understand their survey results, the nuance amongst the numbers, and what it all means for your organization as well. Next slide, please. So the platform itself helps to reach every employee or volunteer, whether they're on the shop floor, behind the bar, or in the field delivering aid. And it's all about facilitating change and improving working lives, right? So WorkBuzz also includes an AI-powered features and action planning for your leaders and managers to drive meaningful action, which is what an employee listening program should be designed for. And we'll touch on a little bit more of that through today's webinar. To put it simply, employee listening is our bread and butter, and AI excites us very much. AI is embedded in what we do. So that's a little bit about us and what we do and how we work, and just setting the scene, just so you understand sort of why we're here and we're talking about AI employee listening today. After that, I think we shall go to the poll. So I will launch the first poll. Um, there we go. I'll give you some time just to, yeah, just to answer this. While I do this, Gemma, I notice you have your hand up. Did you want to put a question in the chat or comment in the chat and we'll be able to answer that as well? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll now and we'll share the results. Over to you, Roger.
Thank you very much indeed to everybody who's taken part. Most of you are in the middle, with about half of you in the sort of neutral zone, about a third who feel effective. I think nobody feels they're very effective, which is probably why you've come to this webinar. See if you can pick up some tips. But 20% of you, thank you for being honest, feel that you're ineffective or very ineffective. So really helpful there just to sort of get a blend of where you see yourself. So thank you for your contribution there. Really helpful.
Brilliant. I will stop sharing. So we just have a question for you, which we'd like you to answer sort of in the chat. So what challenges have you experienced in taking action on your survey? So if you just type in the chat, we'll give you a minute or so to do this, and we will go through the responses from the chat. Yeah, it's starting to come through now. Yeah. So manage your experience and time constraints, manage time to write and deliver um, actions, getting others to take the action plan seriously, managers pushing it back to HR rather than taking ownership, reluctance to take on the feedback, getting the balance right with the line in line with budget cash flow constraints, turning data into meaningful, measurable actions and taken seriously and acted upon. Obviously, ownership, we've had manager support, yeah. Getting others to buy into the action, sure, yeah, that's been coming through. Ensuring it's a collaborative approach rather than just one person, pushback, being seen as the only HR activity, getting support from the business can be tricky, reluctance to change. There's some common themes, I think, coming through here. The time frame to get teams together after waiting for results for ages and then trying to turn insight into action. But we're just piloting WorkBuzz now, so hoping the tool will help. Yeah, I'm sure it will help you with that. Being able to influence more nuanced changes needed when about changing perceptions rather than doing actions to show doing something. Managers not following up on the agreed action, and managers not including the team members in creating the action plan itself. Yeah, so some interesting thing there. Roger, over to you on what you think on some of those insights.
Well, thank you very much indeed for those challenges. That's really brilliant. I've been jotting them down, Sarah, as you were kindly summarizing them from the chat. I think what we'll do is I'll try and weave those in as we go through, but I really recognize those issues and we'll talk about them as we go through. So let me just start with this sort of slide, the challenge. And I suppose what I want to say is that running surveys and designing surveys is relatively straightforward. I do think that driving change after a survey is by far the hardest part. So just to recognize that this is the hardest part. It's the hardest part for all the reasons that you've given. People following through, people pushing back on responsibility, not following through on things that have happened. Um, so this is the tough one, really. And this isn't about survey design, it's about change management. The good news, however, is that there are plenty of tried and tested approaches, which we'll be sharing with you, for organizations to get this really working well. And that's what I want to share with you in the next few slides. I'll go through them relatively rapidly. As Sarah said, we will be sending the recording out to you and the slides out to you after the webinar. And then we'll get into your questions and have further discussion. So the first one, I guess, is just to reflect that new world of work is changing. Obviously, we're all engaging with AI in the way it plays out in our different organizations and roles. Speed is increasing. Things are happening rapidly. And perhaps to leave you with sort of human capabilities are now the differentiator as AI takes on more routine work. What that means is that the human is increasingly important within the whole picture, and that the only way that leaders can stay connected is through listening. So this is all about how leaders can stay in touch, connected, can listen well, and we have that feedback loop from hearing what people are feeling. And I don't think I need to sell this concept to you, but you may find it helpful to use this sort of approach to sell to your colleagues. When people feel heard, things happen. Sometimes extraordinary things happen. I think we all have that strong sense of psychological safety. That when people feel that they're listened to, when they can express views which others might or might not agree with, that psychological safety can be there, and then all sorts of things happen. People give more of themselves, energy increases, people then start putting ideas forward rather than just sort of getting on with the job. Trust grows and change becomes easier. And given our organizations need to change considerably and rapidly, as per the previous slide, change being easier with a high engagement and high trust culture makes a big difference. So that is the prize here that this is all about. So what about sort of traditional listening approaches? I think there are various issues. I think some of you mentioned this time lag issue in your challenges just now. Sometimes you can have annual or every 2 year surveys. They take a while to get the results out. And so there's really quite a big time lag between when people start engaging with survey results and the insight and when the data was actually collected. And that becomes quite an enemy of progress. Inclusion, many organizations get high response rates, but not all. If you're finding that your surveys don't really engage some of your frontline or field work, those not on email, that can be problematic, and therefore you're not necessarily listening to those voices. And then crucially, in the sort of response part of this picture, it's quite possible to do the listening, but without really building much of a response. It's easy to do surveys. It's harder, as I mentioned, to take action. So that some organizations build a big capability about running surveys, but then quite weak in terms of how they take action as a result of them. Ditto towards the bottom end, leaders are often given reports without the capability necessarily to act on them effectively. Organizations slightly struggling to find a way to get to those actions. Some of you are talking about that in the challenges. Can we get to more sort of nuanced changes, nuanced actions, which really reflect what's going on? So I think there are problems on the listening side, and there are problems on the responding side. I think broadly, what we want to suggest is a model which goes a bit like this, that listening is often quite continuous and quite regular and inclusive, bringing together a range of perspectives. We're here talking about engagement surveys and the employee perspective, but I think surveys need also to engage with other stakeholders, customers, service users, and other people who are involved in your organization. Uh, then for that to lead to a quality response, being about empathy, really understanding people, engaging reasonably swiftly with results, which will then lead to engagement, feelings of being heard, building those actions, which is then leading to stronger outcomes. So those stronger levels of engagement leading to more loyalty, better growth, more profitability, and the outcomes and KPIs and measures for your organization. So in that sense, what we're talking about here, as we think about employee listening, isn't just about surveys. It's about building the organizational capability that drives change and measurable business performance. And the last line is important here, which develops over time. I think we should recognize that most organizations don't go from 0 to 100 in one go here. It takes a while to build the capability in your organization. And it will take a few iterations before you get to be operating at a high level in all likelihood. At WorkBuzz, we've built a maturity matrix in relation to this whole area. So we recognize that organizations will move through over time. We've got sort of we've articulated 4 different stages: a sort of exploratory, a developing, established, and leading. And in this presentation, we're going to be talking about what that looks like in various different key factors. This is just a slide defining what those maturity levels are, sort of exploratory, sort of informal, early stages, developing as you're beginning to move onto regular rhythms and improving one's capability, established, really implementing it well and thoroughly and thoughtfully, and operating at leading edge. And we'll try and define what those look like for some of the key factors. Okay, so what are some of the answers here? And we've put together a 12-step model which looks like this. It's in 2 parts, if you will. Steps 1 to 6 are, if you like, a sort of sequential series of actions as you engage in a particular survey, planning it, senior team discussing it, publishing it, deciding priorities, building actions, and then driving change. So think of that as a sort of sequential set of activities. And then 7 to 12 are what we're really calling building capability, which is building that maturity, the things you need to do, which are going to make a big difference to the effectiveness of 1 to 6. So that's how the model is constructed. And I'll go through these points reasonably swiftly. Please do come back if anything's not clear, because I'd like to make sure we have some time for discussion. So number 1, the starting point, plan your listening. I mean, I guess what we're saying here is don't just survey and make up some questions that you just happen to sort of fancy. What we're saying is surveying before you do a survey, think it through a bit, have a think about some of these key questions. What people challenges do we face? What key performance indicators do we want to influence? What do we want, therefore, to understand from our surveys that's going to help us to do that? And what series of timescales might help us achieve that? Those, I think, are 4 key questions. And in the bottom half of this slide, I'm conscious the writing is a little bit small, but you'll see it when you get the results. It's just an example plan. So an organization we've worked with, where we said, look, the overall goal is about improving organizational performance. That's what it's about. We've really got 3 pillars here. The first one's being about leadership and management capability. The second one being about employee engagement and organizational culture. and the third one being about talent retention, levels of attrition too high. And then the orange boxes under each of those pillars describing what we want to try to get from our surveys, try to understand our leadership and management capability. We recognize that there's going to be a range of different performance across the organization to see what high performers are doing well, to really understand employee engagement and what's driving that. And then lastly, to look at what those drivers of attrition and retention are, to have a look at risk levels, how they play out by demographic and team. So a structure like this would very much encourage you to start with as a basis for thinking about your survey. So you've got the results now, the survey results are in, and a key early step is for your senior team to discuss the results. Why? Because the senior team has a massive influence on the way that surveys play out in practice. If you want to run impactful surveys, you want to lead them to lead to action, you absolutely need your senior team to be behind that agenda and driving that forward. So a discussion what might that look like? I want some form of presentation of survey findings, a discussion, initial reactions, what's to celebrate, what's to explore, what are our surprises, and then putting in place timings and responsibilities for sharing results and action planning. That's absolutely really crucial. The senior team sets that up. And then often many senior teams may then follow that up with a longer session, perhaps to reflect on agree priorities and actually get into a bit more detail. So senior team early action really helps drive things forward. The next step, number 3, is publish. You need to get the results out. What does that look like? I think it look like a number of different things. I think a useful word is cascade. That means you get out the organization-wide results, but get them out by department, team, division, region, country, as ever your organization is structured. Wherever possible, make survey results easy to access and to understand. It's very easy for these to be data heavy, to have loads of lines, to have loads of numbers floating around and pluses and minuses and all the rest of it, and quite hard and tough for people to engage with. The more you can improve the result, the way you communicate the results, perhaps key insights, perhaps headlines, perhaps top 3 strengths, top 3 areas to explore, use technology if you can to help that, then you're really going to be helping managers in the organization understand those results more quickly and not giving them a massive analysis task to do when they see the results. Use dashboards wherever possible. They're pretty commonly used now rather than simply running reports and emailing them. Traditionally, the publishing phase has often been very admin heavy on HR, with a responsibility for sending out results to right across the organization. Use dashboards and give people logins access to shortcut that. Move swiftly, as I've said earlier on. Results which are from 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago get out of date, lose the impact. So move as swiftly as you can. See no reason really why you can't be getting results out to everybody in the organization within a couple of weeks. And then follow up that publishing activity with town halls, team meetings, as you see fit. So not only you're sharing the results, but you're providing an environment to discuss those results and start moving the discussion forward in terms of what we're going to do about it. I'm going to share a couple of slides in different places in this presentation of what we at WorkBuzz do to help this. So we have a tool, Sarah mentioned it early on, called People Science AI. And what that does is it's an executive summary tool and provide simple summaries, both organization-wide and also for department or team by team, to help crunch what can be quite a long set of survey results into a few key bullet points and to analyze comments as well. Okay, so we got the results out, and now we need to think about priorities. And when I say we, What I'm really saying is I think this often happens at two levels, the two orange boxes on the left. There's an organizational level about this. What are some of those sort of broad systemic workforce issues requiring senior leadership attention? If leadership is an issue, then probably that's going to need to be engaged with by senior leadership. If pay is an issue across the board, again, that's not going to be an issue for a team by team discussion. That's going to need thought at a senior level leadership. So there's a need to sort of separate out issues at an organizational level. And then there's a team level part of this as well, which is addressing the localized experiences, what's happening in that particular location, that particular team, the work that they are doing, what are their team specific needs, and what can they do to make changes. And also at the team level, you might need to be, again, engaging with strategic goals where there's a team component. Perhaps there's a new communication strategy coming out, and teams need to play their part in that. So that's the two levels that it needs to happen at. I think the first thing in terms of the sort of blue boxes on the right, the approaches involve your teams, absolutely. Involving teams gets buy-in, it gets suggestions, it gets ideas, and that is really constructive. I think you could potentially be faced with great long lists of priorities. Here are a few criteria you might want to think about as you're making choices, and indeed as your managers are making choices. Areas that you control or influence. I mean, that links back to the which level of it. There's no point a manager taking responsibility for something that's not under their control or influence. They might want to be looking at low scoring questions. They might want to be looking at questions where there's a high impact, perhaps on engagement or business outcomes. You'll definitely want to look at your open text questions and looking at some of the most common themes where the most comments have been made. You might also want to just connect this into areas you're already working on and where the survey results are confirming the need for you to take action. So there's no need necessarily to come up with new actions. It may well tell you it's important the work you're already doing, perhaps hasn't yet moved the needle. And you'll want also to sort of balance the quick win, which can be very nice to show that the progress with longer term initiatives, which are really going to make the difference. Overall, we'd say choose no more than three priorities, 1 to 3, absolutely 3 max. Much better to choose 2 things, 2 areas to work on, and to work on them thoroughly and drive it through than to try and bite off too much and then find 3 months or 6 months later that actually not much has happened and that your effort has been spread too thinly and not made much progress. In terms of our platform, the platform again, sorry, the typeface is a little bit small here, but it's just to say that the platform does suggest to managers focus areas that they might want to think about. Managers don't have to accept that. They can accept those focus areas. They can modify them. They can ignore them. But it's coming as a sort of start of a 10 to managers to start thinking about what some of their priorities might be. So you've chosen some priorities, then there's a need to build the action plans. I think the steps might be like this. Number one, think about some long lists of actions. If you're involving your team, you'll definitely want to be getting suggestions from your colleagues. You might want to do a sort of root cause analysis exercise where you take a particular issue and then you just take a systematic approach to understanding what the root causes are before you then identify the actions that are best going to address those root causes. You might want to look at what other teams are doing within your organization, particularly perhaps on topics where there's quite a bit of variability within the organization, because if an approach has been used within another part of your organization, that may well be implementable. You might want to look at action libraries. At WorkBuzz, we have action libraries and plenty of resources to share. You might want to look at how other organizations in your sector addressing it. If you're in hospitality, what are other restaurant chains doing to address some of these issues? So do think outside the box. Yes, absolutely. Listen to your colleagues and get their involvement. But there may well be other forms of analysis you need to do as well to take a sort of systemic approach and to make sure that the actions you put together are going to really work. There's probably then a need to prioritize those actions. Don't work on 17 actions. Again, would be the advice. One of the tools that can be quite helpful is to rate your actions on a sort of impact versus effort matrix. If it's high impact, low effort, that might be a kind of quick win. Get cracking on that. If it's a high impact, high effort, that might well take you into sort of strategic priority. You're going to have to work on this over a period of time. But if it's high impact, and maybe just drop the low impact actions, just focus on those that are going to make more of a difference. And then number three, once you've identified your actions, just think through what the aims are, the scope is, the resourcing, timescales, and responsibilities. But don't forget to do that. Just clarifying that is really helpful. And four, and it's a theme I'll come back to, is it's really helpful if you can store these actions, enable your managers to store them electronically. At WordBuzz, we have that as very much as part of our platform. I'll just share a couple of screens in a moment. Certainly, otherwise, it's quite difficult to lose track of who said they were going to do what and to keep sane when one's trying to track that. But remember, small actions can make a big difference. People feeling listened to, people feeling that managers and leaders really are serious in engaging with feedback and do try and co-create the plan with your team. That's going to get greater impact and greater support as you move forward. So here are just a couple of examples, screenshots from our action planning module within WorkBuzz called ACT. So here we've got a goal. I have the information needed to do my work effectively. Some suggested actions, which the platforms come up with. Again, the manager can accept or reject or create other actions. And then also start putting the individual timescales and responsibilities into play as you plan out the work and save all that action plan within the platform so it's clear. And then six, drive change and monitor progress. So, you've been getting action planning going at team level, at organization-wide level. What happens then? A lot of people in the pre-asked questions have talked about momentum. How do we keep momentum going? This is the stage which is crucial to keep momentum going. So use technology for action plans so you're tracking them. Look at common issues. If you've got 17 teams of your teams all working on career development, well, you might want to kind of connect up with them, see what they're doing, or perhaps get people together to share resources. But what you need to be doing is thinking about, well, are actions being started? Are they being completed? Where they're successes, celebrate them, and then nudge managers as appropriate. A really good technique for teams to do is to discuss progress in their team meetings. So one of those things is how are we doing? What's our progress on our action plan? If you've divided up responsibility between within your team for the various different parts of it, well, how's it going in your part of it? So keep that live and keep that discussion going. I think organizationally, we'd encourage you to review progress quarterly. Take that stock take, discuss it with the senior team. Where are we making progress? Where are we not making progress? And then also drive further actions and surveys to track issues in more detail. I think it's at this stage, it's all about consistency. If you can choose a few actions, but really follow through them so they're actually implemented, then you'll build that trust. I think you won't build the trust if managers take too many actions, don't do any of them, and it all goes into a complete muddle and nobody has any idea what's really happened with the results. So that's the 1 to 6. And here are just a couple of examples from our platform of some screenshots which just help you monitor progress. a number of overdue actions, number of actions with goals and so forth, and then a more detailed chart. Sorry, the typeface is a little bit small, giving you a picture of who's behind, who's driving action, and what the various different goals are. So that's the 1 to 6, the sort of sequential piece. And 7 to 12, which I'll just go through now, is the underlying strategies, if you will, that you can implement, which will really make 1 to 6 work well. So firstly, drive the process. You've got a process here. It needs owning. It needs mapping out. It needs some plans. Do try and move through as quickly as you possibly can. I mentioned earlier, getting the publishing the results within a couple of weeks. Um, do connect your survey results to business goals so leaders and managers can understand how it all fits. And above all, review and adjust the process for future surveys. As we've said before, there is a maturity here, and organisations will learn. We've just set out at the bottom the sort of 4 different descriptions on the maturity in relation to the process. Exploratory, sort of quick feedback, quickly forgotten. The developing, headline results communicated. Established, quick communication of employee results with some progress, and then leading really clear, consistent timelines. So as you look at these, you might want to have a think about where your organization is. We hope it'll be a helpful diagnostic, but also help you think a little bit about what the next step is. Buy-in from leadership, absolutely essential. I mentioned earlier, really great, important to have the senior team involved. This is change management. That's what we're talking about here. If leadership are not up for and supporting and driving change management, it's unlikely to happen. That requires, therefore, having a clear picture about where your leaders are and how you can build support. I think crucially, number 2, do show leaders the connections between engagement and organizational performance. I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment when we just look at sort of KPIs and some of those business cases. The board can also be very helpful. Board members, and particularly non-executive members, will have board members who will have experience from other organizations where they've run engagement surveys, can also be very helpful in saying why it's important and in setting expectations from what can happen. So some of the different maturity situations here in relation to leaders. Exploratory leaders are quite resistant to leaders beginning to show interest, to leaders understanding their influence and recognizing that their actions and behaviors have a huge impact on engagement, to leaders proactively championing engagement. So some maturity material there too. Managers are key to taking action. At the team level, we're saying that the team level is really important, and that's going to be down to manager capability. However, of course, as you've said in your challenges, there are many, many demands on managers, and they are time poor and have many parts of the organization beating a path to their door, saying, please think about this initiative. So it's going to take time. You're going to have a range of manager capability and recognize that. The more you can do, for example, clarifying roles, providing tools, so that might be guides, it might be meeting agendas, it might be slide decks for team meetings to discuss survey results, the more that you can support them. Many of our clients run workshops and webinars for their managers, so it's clear what the expectations are, what the process looks like. Keep them involved, encourage them to learn from each other. Now, there may well be in your survey results some teams with really quite poor results, and it might be the case that the manager's slightly going to struggle to really run an effective team meeting to discuss results because the manager may have a number of capability issues. You might want to think about extra support for teams who are less positive. And again, a maturity matrix picture there in terms of how managers feel about survey results, from sort of no value through to managers really being confident in interpreting results. And I think particularly this aspect is a maturity one, and you're aiming to move broadly, obviously, your managers to the right and moving them up to a greater degree of maturity. But you may well, with new managers coming in, need to refresh that and to get them all on the same page. Communication is incredibly important here. You want good participation. Surveys with low response rates lose credibility rapidly. So you want uh, your people to understand what's happening. Therefore, communication is really crucial. Try and be as open as you can. Connect your initiatives to survey results where possible. If you're planning an upgrade or a change to your talent management process or performance management process, connect it as far as you can to survey results so that people can see what the benefits of the survey are. Support your leaders with narratives. Some leaders are fantastic at communication. Some need a bit of support to help make sense of it, how to communicate key messages. Tell people how they can be involved and keep that communication open and ongoing. Again, key here for maintaining momentum is keeping the communication going so that people, it wasn't, oh, the survey happened in February, we got the results out in March and we haven't heard anything since then. No, keep the communication going so that the momentum is built. And again, we've got a maturity matrix describing how your people might be from sort of lower participation on the exploratory level, skepticism about results and confidentiality, to eager participation by your people at the leading end. I think this is a really good test of where your people are. A couple more. Number 11 is about strategy and alignment. We talked at the beginning about the importance of connecting your surveying to your people challenges and your KPIs. So make these connections, underline them. If you can, number two, try to do the analysis work to show what the difference is that engagement has on some of your outcomes. So what might that look like? You might run a correlation analysis. You might say divide your teams into top third by engagement, middle third, and lowest third, and look at absence rates or retention rates. Start looking at some of those patterns or productivity. So do spend some time once you've got your results to start making these connections, because the more you can make these connections will help underlying the business case for engagement and will help leaders and managers to really come engage. Thirdly, encourage your leaders and managers to use engagement survey data in their decisions. So let's say one particular team is about to contemplate quite a big change. Well, you'll be wanting to encourage them to make that change, but to encourage them to perhaps, as they're thinking about how to go about that change, to reflect on what their people have said in previous results, what their people's views on change are, so that change can be planned effectively. And again, the maturity matrix gives you a sort of least good to best good picture spectrum of how surveys connect into that strategic place. Lastly, number 12, do build some of your survey metrics into your organization scorecard and KPIs. Your board, your senior team will have scorecards that they look at a regular on a regular basis, financial, non-financial, and so forth. Include some survey metrics, some engagement scores, or whatever that you think is appropriate, perhaps two or three, to get into that pack to help the senior team and board take a rounded approach to managing the organization. That will help to build engagement into the agenda and mainstream it. So it's something that's discussed as part of managing the overall organization and business. That's a really helpful techniques. So in summary, a few summaries here. I think some of the principles are around your leaders driving change and encouraging your staff to contribute and your managers. There's an organization-wide part of this, there's a team part of it, and then we've shared some strategies that can really help make that action planning effective. And the perhaps final slide from me, which is what is really going on here is listening, which creates trust, then taking the response, taking the action, which then creates the engagement, and doing it consistently, which then drives the culture forward, which will enable you to change and evolve and be successful as an organization. Thank you very much indeed for listening. We'll move now through to question and answers. Well, questions anyway. I'm quite sure how I'll do on the answers, but I'll do my best. Thank you very much indeed for listening. Sarah, let's go into the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you for that, Roger. So yeah, we'll just jump straight into the Q&A, and these are the pre-asked questions that we had that came in. So the first one was from Lara, and Lara asked, working in a hybrid environment, how can small teams still have a culture in the office that is collaborative, supportive, and rewarding?
A great question, Lara. And this isn't a webinar primarily on hybrid working, but your culture will exist. Obviously, whatever you're doing, culture will exist. I think your challenges are to think a bit about what hybrid means. Does that mean everybody's in for a certain number of days? Are there some people who can't? I think it takes a deliberate approach, finding out and getting ideas. How do you handle meetings? How does line management work? Are you able to create social spaces and social times do you get together? I think crowdsource ideas from your team so that you're in listening mode, not just telling mode, and that will all help build your culture.
Brilliant. A couple of questions here from Lydia. So, firstly, why action planning often breaks down, and also how leading organizations maintain momentum after surveys.
Great. Thank you very much, Lydia. And there's also a linked question from Rod on how to maintain momentum.
Yes. Yeah.
I think action planning often breaks down because people come up with too many actions and then get completely sort of daunted by that. So choose a few. We said choose 1 to 3 actions, 1 to 3 priorities. I mean, why not start by choosing one? Better to choose one and to do it and then build the capability and perhaps next time choose two than to choose 5 or 6 and then find you just haven't made progress. And that's important for so many reasons. It's important so that you actually get some action done rather than spreading your effort too thin. But it's also in terms of commitment and being fair to people. There's if you say we're going to work on 5 areas, but then work on 2, people will be really disappointed. They said they're going to work on 5, but they didn't. They worked on 2. That's a negative experience. So be realistic. I think sometimes it's about weak manager capability and what that is telling us, which is do build your manager capability. Perhaps those who are a bit weaker, help them a bit and help them choose 1 or 2. And I think the other things, and this links to the momentum point, which is you've got to get responsibility and accountability right. So what that means is that you want those who manage your managers to be holding them accountable. You need to have sold this into the line. And then managing momentum is then about keeping the communication going. It's about following up. It's about saying every so often, every month, every 3 months, taking stock. Where are we making progress? What actions have been done? What actions haven't yet been done? How is it going? Connecting in those with those who said they were going to take action and not sort of hoping, but actually driving it forward, and also celebrating successes because that's, as we all know, positive reinforcement and successes make such a difference to organizations to build successful momentum, as well as focusing on sometimes the areas that perhaps haven't made progress where a bit of extra attention is needed.
Brilliant. Next question is from Robert, and Robert has asked, what helps implement learnings from a survey in a small charity where the HR function is carried out by people with other responsibilities?
Yeah, it's a great question, Robert. And I think that in many ways, the steps and processes are the same. But if it's the case that HR responsibilities have been divided up, perhaps between various managers or leaders, then it's certainly helpful for perhaps one person to really own the process and own some of the support, to recognize that as the organization drives its change forward on those sort of 1 to 6 steps, that somebody is thinking about manager capability, somebody's thinking about the overall process, somebody's checking that leaders are really engaged. So I think the principles are the same, but you'll just want to think about who does what just carefully. In some ways, there may be some advantages because if it's all undertaken by the line, then there won't be a sort of HR to line discussion. It'll be integrated. So yeah, same process. Just think through the responsibilities.
Brilliant. And then Zoe wants some inspiration for engaging employees with longer term and perceptions-based changes, engaging people to sustain excellent engagement, culture, and pride survey results.
Thank you, Zoe. Um, I think the biggest inspiration in any of this is really taking act is listening and taking action. That is the heart of it. I think that if you're thinking of sort of longer term, perhaps more strategic issues, that is great. Perhaps a question for you would be, have you, as an organization, been able to take action successfully on smaller, more tactical things? If you have, then that's great. You're building the trust and building the organizational muscle, build up to the longer term, perhaps harder strategic changes. If you've struggled on the tactical, then perhaps start at the tactical before becoming too ambitious. Above all, I think sell it. I think as you look at survey results, perhaps over a number of surveys, you may well think, well, we've done some of the more straightforward things. So there are some underlying things. So that's really good to be thinking about those. Talk to your teams, talk to your employees about those, and see if those can be prioritized. Um, and I think sustaining excellent engagement and culture um, is essential. I think that it requires continual reinforcement. Um, if you've built a high engagement, high culture, high pride culture, that's fantastic. But keep at it. It will need continual attention. It will need reinforcing. There may be new aspects of your engagement culture that need to be developed. So I suppose what I'm saying really is avoid complacency, avoid saying we've got there, we can worry about other things now. Do keep at it so that culture that you've achieved is sustained.
Brilliant. And then Adele and Alistair have both asked questions around sort of the best ways and how to measure and communicate change effectively and the results from action plans.
Yeah, thank you for this. I think, probably a number of different approaches. One is to have a think a bit about, well, what, what actions have been undertaken. It might be possible to say, well, we identified 103 actions, the result of our last survey, and we've undertaken 60 of them, or 85 of them, or whatever, and that can be good. And you might want to, in you sort of what you said we did, list those out, summarize those, document those. I think as you think about measurement, I think probably you'll also want to use follow-up surveys to see if you've made a difference. Have you, as it were, moved the needle? If you've wanted to improve scores on career development, and your previous survey, you had a score of, 35% of people felt the organization helped them develop their careers, you know, and you've done some work on it. Have you actually made the difference? Have you moved that up to 50 or 60 or 70? So you'll also want to look at the outcome, if you like, through future surveys, and that's also going to be part of your process.
Brilliant. And then Anna has asked how to encourage active action planning and ensure that both managers and their team members see the value of having action plans.
I think it's a great question, Anna. We've tried to sort of set out some of the mechanics of how to do that and the importance of skilling up your managers. But I think, as ever in organizations, it's why is usually the most important. And if you don't engage on why, then you're not going to engage on how. So I think the question, in a sense, is well, why should the manager put time into action planning? What benefits is the manager going to gain from that? And that I think is about helping managers to understand the connections between engagement and various different performance measures. So helping managers to understand that engaged teams work more effectively, that engaged teams perform more highly, that engaged teams have better results, and so forth. So that is the territory I think you're in. If some of your managers are skeptical, you need to be telling that story about what the benefits are of having high engagement teams and teams where um, people feel listened to and actions can be taken.
Brilliant. And then Kristen has asked how, and I think this touches on a previous answer that you gave, Roger, but has asked how to demonstrate to colleagues that action has been taken from surveys, the best way to collate and communicate the "you said we did" piece.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You come up to the next survey and you find yourself thinking, how are we going to communicate the next survey? How are we going to get a good response rate? And an absolutely crucial piece is, well, what did you do with the previous survey? So, I mean, I think that, as I said, that can be a collation of organization-wide actions. Do keep track of these things, and also actions taken at a team level as well. So, try and articulate that as clearly as you can, um, and that try to connect in initiatives you've taken. As you remember, we updated our performance management process, 6 months ago as a result of the survey results. Connect those things back into survey results. It honors the feedback from your people and helps to communicate that actually it really does matter and that you're an organization that really does take action depending on survey results.
Brilliant. The next question is from Karen. This is more of a practical question. So, how to create a simple action planning toolkit for leaders to discuss with their teams?
Okay, nice question, Karen. I think toolkits are usually helpful. I think simple is definitely good. You don't want to be sharing 57 pages, 57 slides with your managers who you'll have lost. I think keep it really clear. What do you expect managers to do? What reports are they going to get? What do you expect them to do with it? If you expect them to run a team meeting for a discussion, you might want to come up with an agenda for that meeting. You might want to come up with some slides for that meeting that they could use to make it easy, um, um, and get feedback, perhaps from a few managers, perhaps pilot it, get a feedback from a few friendly managers before rolling it out across the piece. But yep, those toolkits can be really helpful and a really practical way for a manager to kind of go, right, what would they want me to do with it? The answer is here. Simple summaries, but also do socialize those toolkits. As I said, many of our clients want to get some discussion going and run webinars or meetings with their managers. Not least, some managers can say, can push back to talk about issues. What are going to be the difficult things we're going to have to do in doing this and share results and provide support to each other. So yes,
Mm,
absolutely the toolkits and the tangible products that you can create, but it also creates some space for managers to talk about this. And some may well have fears, some may well have done this before and feel very confident about discussing it. And there may well be some partnering up and some sort of mentoring and that you could do supporting where perhaps some of your managers or leaders who are less experienced or less confident could gain a bit of experience from those who are more.
brilliant. So Catherine has asked, she asked a question around momentum, but she has also asked, how do you make the changes you implement as a result seen and valued by employees?
Yeah, no, nice question, Catherine. We've talked a bit about momentum, importance of communication, importance of progress checking and keeping on it. How do you make the changes you implement be seen and valued? I mean, talk about them, socialize them, whether it's in survey-specific communications, whether it is in town halls, away days, different meetings. Um, Perhaps, as I said, create an item in your manager's team meetings about changes that are happening or changes that have happened. Take examples, write up case studies, but broadly, take some of that stuff and communicate it is crucial, so that people can see this stuff. It's not all happening. It might be happening. Very worthy things might be happening. I think what I'm arguing is to encourage you all to communicate those, to take all that wonderful stuff that's happening and make that public.
Brilliant. I'm conscious of time. We've got one more pre-asked question. We've actually got one in the Q&A as well, but I think they can tie in quite nicely together. So Lee has asked as a pre-asked question, benefits of pulse surveys and how to turn feedback into action. And then through the Q&A, we've also had one on how often should we have employee engagement surveys, that we're aware that some companies do one employee survey plus pulse surveys throughout the year. So just want some guidance on that.
Okay, lovely questions. I think the benefits of pulse surveys, I mean, pulse surveys come in different forms, and they can be team specific. So you might, for example, if you had a team who was struggling a bit, and you need to put an action plan together and then follow up perhaps 6 months later and see whether things have moved. Also, pulse surveys can be organization wide, perhaps focusing on key priorities. If you've chosen two or three organization-wide priorities, perhaps run a pulse survey to see if the needle is moving on that. How often to run surveys? I think broadly, what we're seeing is organizations running surveys generally more frequently as the pace of change speeds up. I don't think there's a single frequency. I think you might want to think, well, how often are we running a sort of larger survey? Maybe perhaps annually. Shorter pulse surveys, perhaps a little bit more frequently, 3 6 months can be quite common. But also don't forget those team specific surveys or surveys on specific topics that you'll also want to find useful. So I don't think there's a single answer. I think you have to think about what your managers and leaders are up for. I would say that if you're not engaging thoroughly on your main survey actions, focus on doing that before launching too many other surveys. A whole series of surveys where no action has been taken, it ends up being quite depressing actually, and isn't a good recipe. So take it slowly, make sure you follow through on the actions, but then broadly know that most organizations are generally serving their people more frequently as the pace of change speeds up.
Brilliant. Thank you. Obviously, I know we've run over slightly. Appreciate everyone taking the time to be on the call today. And thank you again, Roger, for presenting. There's some really useful takeaways there. I have put in the chat, there's a link just to a short feedback survey just to let us know what you thought of today's session, as well as a link just to some of our upcoming webinars as well that we've got coming up. But really do like to, yeah, again, thank you, Roger, for presenting today and for everyone who's attended and for all the questions and contributions that you've all made over the course of this session. Yeah, all that's left is just to wish you all a rest of your pleasant Wednesday and hopefully see you on one of our webinars soon.
Thank
Take
you very
care,
much.
everyone.